जनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्यधीमं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादां गगना ललिता Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Jagamanaloba Janabitatarane Jagamanaloba Ekinenita Shanta Megadadara Nikate Advaita Sri Vasa Chakradara Siyate Gauracha Ratna Simhasana Arati Korena Brahma Adi Devagane Nara Hari Hari Kore Chamaraduraya Sanjaya Mukunda Bhakti Goshalidaya Sankabhaje Gansabhaje Hare Karataya Madhurari Ganga Bhaja Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Shila Prabhupada ki.
Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvakacharya, Stosattar His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvakacharya, Stosattar His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Prabhupada ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki. Friends ko Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktarvind ki. Jai Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan ki. Jai Jai Shri Shri Vrindavan Dham ki. Jai Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Chitra Dham ki. Ayodhya Dham ki. Ganga Mai ki. Yamuna Mai ki. Tulasi Maharani ki. Samaveda Bhaktavrinda ki. Glorious to some devotees, Hare Krishna. Glorious to some devotees, Hare Krishna. Glorious to some devotees, Hare Krishna. Glorious to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So thank you all for joining us for this evening's Aarti. We're now going to recite a prayer to Lord Nrsingadev. Does everyone know who Lord Nrsingadev is? Can we get a show of hands? Some of us? Okay, that's good. So Lord Nrsingadev came in this form as half man, half lion, and he came to save his dear devotee Prahlad. So oftentimes we pray to him for protection and removal of obstacles in our lives. So if you're not familiar with the prayer, if you could kindly just meditate upon the words. You can even use these two things in front of you, which is your hands, to clap. And also, if you are going through some sort of suffering yourself, or you know someone who's going through some sort of struggle or difficulty, you could pray to Lord Nrsingadev to help them. Shri Nrsimha Bhagwan ki Namaste Narasimhaya Namaste concludes this evening's Aarti. And they're serving Mahaprasadam outside in the reception if you'd like to take. And shortly there will be a wonderful discussion on the Bhagavad Gita. Has everyone read the Bhagavad Gita before? Or I think, can we get another show of hands? So if you've not heard of the Bhagavad Gita or not read it, please do join us and feel enlightened. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Yeah, it's quite simple. That answers almost one of my last questions. Thank you for
Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Giridhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to today's Bhagavad Gita class. I'll just start off with some invocation prayers before we get started with our verses. So please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Great. So today we're going to be doing two texts. We're going to be going through chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme, and we'll be doing verse 15 and verse 16. So we'll do the Sanskrit for verse 15, and then I'll just go through verse 16 as well afterwards, and then just do some prayers. So we'll start with the Sanskrit for verse 15. So, Mama Upetya Punarjanma Dukhalayam Ashashvatam Napbhuvanti Mahatmana Samsiddhim Paramakata. So please repeat after me. Mam Upetya Punarjanma Dukhalayam Ashashvatam Napnuvanti Mahatmana Shamshidim Paramam Gataha. Okay, repeat after me, word for word translation. Mam, me. Upetya, achieving. Puna, again. Janma, birth. Dukkha, alayam, place of miseries. Ashashvatam, temporary. Na, never. Apnuvanti, attain. Maha Atmana, the great souls. Samsiddhim, perfection. Paramam, ultimate. Gataha, having achieved. Translation by His Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. So I'll also read the purport. Since the temporary material world is full of miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death, naturally, he who achieves the highest perfection and attains the supreme planet, Krishna Loka, Goloka Vrindavan, does not wish to return. The supreme planet is described in Vedic literature as Avyakta and Akshara and Paramagati. In other words, that planet is beyond our material vision and is inexplicable, but is the highest goal, the destination for the Mahatmas. The Mahatmas receive transcendental messages from the realized devotees and thus gradually develop devotional service in Krishna consciousness and become so absorbed in transcendental service that they no longer desire elevation to any of the material planets, nor do they even want to be transferred to any spiritual planet. They only want Krishna and Krishna's association and nothing else. That is the highest perfection of life. This verse specifically mentions the person's devotees of the Supreme Lord, Krishna. These devotees in Krishna consciousness achieve the highest perfection of life. In other words, they are the supreme souls. So that's verse 15, and because we'll also be covering 16, I'll just read that as well and go through the purport. So text 16. Abrahma bhuvanal loka punar avertino arjuna mam upetya nakunteya punar janma navidyate. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. All kinds of yogis, karma, jnana, hatha, etc., eventually have to attain devotional service in bhakti yoga, or Krishna consciousness before they go to Krishna's transcendental abode and never return. Those who attain the highest material planets, the planets of the demigods, are again subjected to repeated birth and death. As persons on earth are elevated to higher planets, people on higher planets such as Brahmaloka, Chandraloka, and Indraloka fall down to earth. The practice of sacrifice, called Panchagni Vidya, recommended in the Chandogya Upanishads, enables one to achieve Brahmaloka. But if, on Brahmaloka, one does not cultivate Krishna consciousness, then he must return to earth. Those who progress in Krishna consciousness on the higher planets are gradually elevated to higher and higher planets, and at the time of universal devastation are transferred to the eternal spiritual kingdom. Sridhar Swami in his commentary on Bhagavad Gita quotes this verse: Brahmana sahate sarve samprate prati sanchare parasyante kartatmanaha pravishtani parampadam. Where there is devastation of this material universe, Brahma and his devotees who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness are all transferred to the spiritual universe and to specific spiritual planets according to their desires. Okay, so before we get started, I'm just going to do some quick prayers. Om Jnanatirmandasya Gyanjana Shalakya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Ham Sopadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagashatam Sahagana Raghunatam Tam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Raghunatam Tam Shakhavitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinobandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Ashubhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna everyone. Thank you so much for coming here to Bhagavad Gita class, and I request for your blessings so that I can share the wisdom that has been passed down by all the wonderful devotees and ultimately Srila Prabhupada's books as well. So yeah. So for today's class, I'm going to be covering a few different things. So firstly, I'm going to start off by talking about the spiritual world as a destination, because in text 15, Krishna says that one never returns to this temporary world. So ultimately, we'll be going to, that spiritual place. So some descriptions of that. I'll be talking a little bit about this highest perfection, which is mentioned here in the verse in the purport, and expanding on that. I'll be touching on the two secrets which Srila Prabhupada talks about to getting to that highest perfection. And then I'll just talk a bit about the higher planetary systems and why maybe it's risky for us to aim to go there. So with regards to the spiritual world, I thought it was really nice to talk a little bit about descriptions of the spiritual world, because ultimately, it's only when we have a desire to go to the spiritual world will Krishna allow us to go there. It's just like, when we decide to go on holiday, we wouldn't just pick a random country. We'll pick a place where maybe we've seen some pictures, we've heard some descriptions by some friends, and then we start thinking, oh, I want to go there. And so that's why it's really important that we hear these descriptions of the spiritual world through, by reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, reading the Bhagavad Gita. So actually, before even making that description, it's worth saying here, as Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, that actually, trying to describe the spiritual world is actually really beyond our material vision. It's actually infinite and eternal, and it's really difficult for us to comprehend using our material frame of reference, from what we've experienced, because it's completely different. And an example of that is like if you say, Earth is an apple, you can't say that, the spiritual world is like a mango. No, because it's just completely of a different category. You could say it's like a diamond. So it's got completely different form, completely different function. It's a whole different, category. So, that's one thing. And when I was thinking about like why it's so difficult for us to comprehend, like one of the examples that came to my mind was, Krishna. When we read in the Bhagavad Gita, he's described as, sort of that kind of grayish, blackish. And yet at the same time, he's also described as having this effulgence that lights, the whole spiritual universe, because the spiritual world doesn't have a sun or a moon. So all that light is coming from him. But in the material world, we know that the color black, absorbs light, whereas in the spiritual world, it's that his blackish form is actually emanating light. So it's very different from what we're used to conceiving here. So that's just one example. Another one is that, the spiritual world is ever fresh. It never deteriorates, but at the same time, it's always changing and full of variety. Here on earth, like when we think of change, it's usually starts with birth of something and then something dies, like, the trees on, and the leaves are falling, so, they're dying and then new ones are growing, and that's spring. So it's very cyclical, whereas in the spiritual world, it's said that it's full of variety, like Radharani cooks a different dish for Krishna every single day, and it's never, ever, ever the same, and yet this is going on eternally. So it's really, really, really difficult for us to understand. And in 820, which you'll be hearing about in a few classes' time, it says, "Yet there is another unmanifest nature, which is eternal and transcendental to this manifest and unmanifest nature. It is supreme and is never annihilated." So again, the material world, we see even up to the topmost planets is being annihilated again and again, whereas, in the spiritual world, this notion of time doesn't really exist, and everything is just going on and on and on. So that's sort of some parts of the spiritual world. We also hear in chapter 15 where we see that the spiritual world, the material world is just a reflection of the spiritual world, which is really interesting, because when we, like over here, if we see the reflection of a tree, the way it looks like is just a sort of a blackish outline. It has no form. It has no characteristics. It's just really dull. Whereas the actual tree has, the scent, it has the touch, the form. But actually, in relation to the spiritual world, what we see here is actually just that kind of one-dimensional. It has nothing. Whereas the spiritual world actually has the real life, the real variety, the beauty, the everything. So actually what we're experiencing here is just really, really dull, but we just don't know it yet. So like Srila Prabhupada says, he's like, this material world is only reflection. Just like you create a clay doll, a very nice, beautiful girl, but it is only imitation. It is a shadow of the real beautiful girl. So, it's so that's one part of it. But also, like, everything here almost is like the trees. They don't really. The Vaikuntha trees are said to be fully conscious living beings, like everything else there. They supply everything the residents desire. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it says, in the Vaikuntha planets, the land, the trees, the fruits, the flowers and the cows, everything is completely spiritual and personal. The trees are desire trees. So it's quite different to here, whereas here the material trees and stuff, they are providing us the fruits and stuff, but they're subject to the material laws, and it's very much dependent on stuff. Whereas in the spiritual world, everything is living, reciprocating, giving. It's just something else. So that's one part of it. The other part of the material world is that no one there has material bodies. Everyone has spiritual bodies. So what does that mean? So if we thought about if we didn't have this material body and this mind, what are some of the implications? So for example, we wouldn't have to be wearing our face masks. We wouldn't be at risk of catching COVID. We wouldn't, be experiencing all these diseases that we do, diseases of the body, but also diseases of the mind. In essence, having no material body means that there's no birth, there's no death, there's no disease, and there's no old age. And, when there's a lack of those, we're essentially free from anxiety. And that's what Vaikuntha means. Vaikuntha means free from anxiety. So that's a really nice part of it. But also what I was thinking is, in this material world, we're sort of in a bit of a difficult situation because we have this material bodies. We're sort of at its whim because we have these senses, and the senses are constantly demanding things from us, and so we're constantly interacting with the different sense objects. But no matter how much we give them, no matter what we do, they're never fulfilled, because ultimately we're looking for happiness, and happiness is actually something that comes from the soul, and the soul's function is to love and is to serve. But because we keep operating on this bodily level, we'll never actually get there. So obviously the residents of spiritual world, they don't have these material bodies, so they're actually completely acting on the level of the soul, which is to serve, which is to love, and therefore they're always in spiritual bliss. So here also there's a really I was also just thinking about different spiritual, we were talking about the spiritual world being, material world being a reflection, and that everything exists. So relationships also exist, emotions also exist. So I remember once asking the question, I'm like, oh, so does anger also exist? Does frustration and stuff like that also exist? And yeah, they do exist. And I thought, oh, but aren't those sort of bad emotions? But Srila Prabhupada says that actually, because they're in relation to Krishna, those emotions of frustration or anger, those very emotions actually ultimately give us bliss. And so they're not negative in the way that we experience them here. They're actually really beautiful emotions. So just in the way that I was saying that, emotions exist, relationships also exist. So in Bhagavatam, it says that in the Vaikuntha planets, there are husbands and wives, but there is no question of them giving birth to children or having sex life. In the Vaikuntha planets, both husbands and wives are extraordinarily beautiful, and they're attracted to one another, but they do not enjoy sex life. Indeed, they consider it not to be very relishable, because both husband and wife are always absorbed in Krishna consciousness and in glorifying and chanting the glories of the Lord. So, yeah, one of the main functions of the spiritual world is that everyone is constantly engaged in just serving Krishna, and Krishna is in the center of everything, which can sound like, oh, but where's the enjoyment for us? But actually, because we were saying that there's no material body and that everyone's just acting on the level of the soul, and the soul's way to be happy is actually to serve Krishna, to love Krishna. And so the residents there are experiencing eternal joy and bliss. So, yeah. And lastly, in the spiritual planets, everyone has, an eternal relationship with Krishna in one of 5 forms. And the beautiful thing about it is that whatever relationship they have with Krishna out there is unconditional. It's eternal. And I was just reflecting that even in our relationships here in the material world, we almost expect our relationships to be unconditional. We expect to, for like our loved ones to unconditionally be there for us, or to almost be perfect in their relationship with us. But that's not a really realistic expectation, because at the end of the day, we're all conditioned beings. But, there is a validity in that desire, because actually our source and what we're meant to have is this perfect relationship with Krishna. But we're just in the wrong place. We're not in the right place to experience it. So, in the spiritual world, we have these beautiful eternal relationships with Krishna, which, can give us everything more that we've ever wanted. So, that's a little bit on what the spiritual world is like, and it's nice for us to just maybe meditate on some of those things. So the next bit I wanted to talk about is the highest perfection. So in this verse, Krishna says that, after attaining me, those great souls never return to this temporary world, because they have attained the highest perfection. So I just want to ask if anyone could say, what the highest perfection means to them.
Hare Krishna. Oh, okay. The highest perfection, you said. What does that mean?
Yeah.
To have pure love for Krishna, and to be absorbed in that pure love, and to not worry about anything else. To just want to be in love with Krishna and to serve Krishna, no matter what happens or what's going on around. It's just you're completely absorbed in Krishna and your relationship with Krishna.
That's like the highest perfection answer to that. So that's pretty much what Srila Prabhupada says in the purport. He says the highest perfection is they only want Krishna and Krishna's association and nothing else. So it's really nice to know and meditate on that goal, but for most people out there, they don't really know that, and if we don't know that, we can't really strive for that. So even if we're not there, just to remember that as a goal, I find that helpful for me anyways. Yes, please.
Just kind of thought that in order to achieve this highest perfection, to always be absorbed in Krishna's service, to always desire to be with Krishna, first we have to understand who we are. So, this is like another understanding of, this perfection, like to understand who we are, because if you understand that I am the servant of God, and so what is my duty also in this relationship? And if you understand you are the servant and your duty is to serve, then you can act in this relationship, and then you can achieve perfection.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much. Yeah, exactly that. So in order for us to attain Krishna, we have to know our relationship with him, and then we can actually work towards that. Yeah, thank you so much. So Srila Prabhupada also says in Bhagavad Gita in verse 410 in the purport, he says, real love for God is called prema, the highest perfectional stage of life. In the prema stage, there is constant engagement in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So by the slow process of devotional service, under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, one can attain the highest stage, being freed from all material attachment, from the fearfulness of one's individual spiritual personality, and from the frustrations that result in void philosophy. Then one can ultimately attain to the abode of the Supreme Lord. So when I was actually looking at, different definitions of highest perfection, I just realized that, the descriptions of it come up again and again in different verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the purports as a reminder for us. And there's so many different verses. So I think Amrita, you actually touched on one of the other definitions of what the highest perfection is as well. One of the other ones I quite liked is 2:9-22 of Srimad Bhagavatam. The highest perfectional stage of life is to know the Lord by actual perception. So this is to actually have direct experience of, the Lord and His abode, which I thought was really nice. And yeah, essentially Srila Prabhupada says that it's Narayana Smriti, to always be constantly engaged and thinking of, Krishna. So yeah. So then, it just made me think, okay, that's the goal, but yeah, how do we get there? And, as you said, first of all, we have to, in order to actually think of someone, we can't just think of someone we don't know. So in order to always be thinking of someone, we have to know who they are. We have to know what our relationship with them actually is. And ultimately, if we want to remember them in a positive light and always to be thinking of them, we have to love them, right? I mean, if you don't really love someone, you don't really know them, or you don't have a relationship with them, then how can you always think of them? So actually, it's that kind of this knowing who we are, knowing who Krishna is actually quite an endeavor. And that's why in our, in Krishna consciousness, that's why we're told again and again, it's so important for us to hear and cultivate this knowledge. And this knowledge is there for us so that we can know who we are, we can know who Krishna is. So then when I looked deeper into, how we attain this highest perfection, Srila Prabhupada basically says the two secrets of attaining this perfectional stage. So essentially given to us in the Bhagavad Gita, the two famous verses, 1866, which is Sarva Dharmam Pratyaja Mamit Manaha Matparayanaha. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. So those are the two ways that we could start, attaining this perfectional stage. And when I was thinking, I think, initially when I'd actually read 934, this, engage your mind in me, and even the aspect of surrender, it seemed just so far-fetched. But actually, it's something which is a state of mind and something that we can actually do. And when it comes to surrender, it's actually verse 7:19 where Krishna says that those who know me, who have surrendered to me, know me to be the cause of all causes. So surrendering to Krishna ultimately means believing that he is, the cause of all causes. And actually today I just heard a little snippet from Satchidananda Maharaj who says, we hear again and again, we're not the body and the soul, and, there's Krishna. But he's like, just think about it for a moment. What if actually Krishna was real and he was the cause of all causes? Like, what does that actually mean for the way that we live our lives today? So I'm just going to ask you guys if you have any answers to that. What are the implications if Krishna is actually real and the way that he is described in all the scriptures, and he's the cause of all causes? Like, what implication does that have on our lives today? Yeah.
So I think that we would be able to just accept everything as it is, just be happy, just to always have full faith that this is Krishna's arrangement, this is what he wants for me. And I think, we would be very satisfied thinking that, having this consciousness that, he's my father, he's taking care of me, and he's doing the best thing for me, and I just take it.
Yeah.
I was kind of going to say the same thing. I just dedicate everything to Krishna. Like no holding back.
Yeah.
If we know that he is the cause of all causes, then why?
There's nothing to
Why
hold
do we
back.
need to think about any other goal or any other motive if we know that he's ultimately the source of everything?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's interesting because I feel like we talk about these things every day, but when I look at my own life and my own feelings and emotions, I probably don't believe it, because my emotions tell me something different, because I still have so much fear. I still have so much attachment. I'm still trying to control things. So, when we really, really believe that Krishna is the cause of all causes, then, like you said, you just accept things as they are, and we realize like how little control we have over the situations that we do actually have. And the fear goes away because we know that Krishna is our well-wisher, and he'll always love us. So, I thought when I heard that meditation and I really thought about it, I was like, wow, that's such a interesting way to think about it. So that's on surrender. So surrendering actually means, truly just like 100% committing ourselves to believing that Krishna is the cause of all causes. And the implications of that means that he's our maintainer, he's controller, and realizing our position and being humble. And the second point around engage your mind and always thinking of me, etc. That verse, I remember like initially when I first ever read that verse, I actually thought it was difficult to implement, because it almost in my mind felt like renunciation, because how can you always think of Krishna like we have our material duties and our lives to go about? But actually, as Srila Prabhupada says, that the devotees often seem like karmis and from the outside, because they're engaging in everything, but actually within their minds, everything is an offering to Krishna. Everything is in relation to Krishna, and that's what it means to always engage our minds in Krishna, to become his devotees, to worship him. As that means in our day-to-day ordeals, we can think about what would Krishna want me to do here, or this has happened, what is Krishna trying to tell me, what does Krishna want me to work on? Or in the same way, we could look at the things around us, and we could meditate on the sun and think that's Krishna's warmth, or the taste of water. So when he says engage your mind in me, it just means dovetailing everything into Krishna's service. And from the outside we could still do what we need to be doing, but just making sure everything is in relation to the cause of all causes, Krishna. So so I just wanted to just touch on those two and my personal experience, because so another bit in this purport which really caught my attention was when Srila Prabhupada says that the Mahatmas receive transcendental messages from the realized devotees and thus gradually develop devotional service in Krishna consciousness and become so absorbed in transcendental service that they no longer desire elevation, etc., etc. So, for this clearly highlighted to me that actually, yes, of course, to attain prema, to get to the highest perfection, we have to, do all of those things. But ultimately, we're at the mercy of the devotees. We're at the mercy of Krishna. And in one of the morning classes here during Srimad Bhagavatam, one of the speakers was saying that, if the perfection is here through our own endeavors of, surrendering, thinking of Krishna, we can come up to here. But there's always going to be this much of a gap, and they called it the mercy gap. And that's why we require the association of, pure devotees. And, this is where a spiritual master comes in. And this is why, we're reading Srila Prabhupada's books, because he is this person for us. And so, I thought remembering that always is quite important and keeping us humble, because actually we just can't get there without that mercy. So that is text 15. Now I'm just going to quickly touch on text 16 before wrapping off. So I'll just read this translation again. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. So this is really interesting, because in the previous verse as well, it says that all places in this material world are full of miseries, and even here it's highlighted that birth and death take place in all the higher planetary systems. Yet people still have a desire to visit the higher planetary systems, and actually, it's described that we have above the earth there's 7 higher planetary systems, and actually the topmost planetary systems, Brahmaloka and Satyaloka, which we were described today in the morning Srimad Bhagavatam class, was said that actually they don't experience birth and death there, and actually there is no birth, death, old age and disease, and actually they don't experience lamentation. And the Prabhupada said that actually there's a lot of compassion there in those higher planetary systems. And actually when we read some of the higher descriptions of the high planetary systems, it's really incredible. It's such beautiful places, beautiful people. The demigods and the residents that live there have so many powers. And, when you read that, it's, I guess it would be natural to have some desire or at least some inquisitiveness to want to, to see what it's about. But actually, when, here it actually says that even those places, there is a form of birth and death, because even Brahma still has, he has to die and he has to leave. But then it's just, there's different reasons why. Can anyone tell me why maybe it's dangerous for us not to aspire to go to the high planetary systems? Or to aspire, yes. yeah, sorry. Sorry?
It's not where we want to go.
Yeah. So, ultimately, I think people who are, totally, who are in love with Krishna, who have reached the highest perfectional stage, they don't even want to go there, right? But for a lot of people, like I said, it could be somewhere that we want to visit. But actually, the thing that clicked to me is that even when we go there, we're still enjoying separately from Krishna. And so Krishna isn't in the picture. And so like I was saying, the soul's function is to love Krishna, to serve Krishna. So again, the ultimate happiness and the ultimate, we're not united with our ultimate function, even in the highest places on in the material world. The other reason why is also thinking it's really risky for us is because, if we haven't reached that stage in our Krishna consciousness yet, and obviously if we're still inquiring about the higher planetary systems, it means that we still have a way to go before we, reach that prema bhakti. But if it's hard for us here, imagine how hard it must be for us in the higher planetary systems, because over there, sense enjoyment is to a new level. There's so much enjoyment, there's so much opulence. So within all of that, just think how difficult it must be to actually attain Krishna consciousness and to actually go there. Even though it does say that we can, gradually elevate ourselves, it's actually really difficult for us. And I was also thinking, at times in our lives when we're enjoying so much and we're so comfortable, it is actually quite easy for us to also commit offenses. Because, when you're in your element, it's easy to take a joke too far or to maybe offend someone without realizing it. And that's why in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we see just so many instances where even the demigods, who are actually very pious, are still committing offenses. And, once we've committed an offense and, if we've had to drop down from the high planetary systems, we're going to be stuck here for millions and millions of years trying to work our way back. And so it's just not worth the detour, essentially, because, And I was just thinking, even Brahma, he's the highest in Satyaloka, yet he is also an illusion. That's why we see in Canto 10, he offends Krishna because he doesn't see reality as it is, and he questions whether it's actually Krishna that's, has come down and is enjoying with his cowherd boys. Or, we see even Indra, because he has so much power and he has so much opulence, he's in a constant state of fear and anxiety because someone might surpass him in, conducting one extra Ashwamedha Yagya than he has. And in that name, he's committing so many offenses, as we see in Canto 4. So, the descriptions are really beautiful of the higher planetary systems, but, not only is it dangerous for us to go there, but it's not our ultimate destination, and actually it's not where our ultimate happiness lies. And I think the kind of biggest sticking point for me was when when we see the prayers of all the exalted devotees, when they actually meet with Krishna face to face and when they really experience him, they, in their prayers, you can see, say that I don't want anything. I don't want the highest planetary systems. I don't want any mystic yoga. All I want is to be engaged in your service. So even Dhruva Maharaj in the 4th canto, initially he set out to have the highest of the highest planets, even better than Brahma. And when he actually, through his meditation, finally met Lord Vishnu, he actually said, actually, no, I don't want this. I only want you. And so that made me think that actually, just because we can't perceive the spiritual world, which goes back to the first point, it's really hard for us right now to want it. But actually, when we understand what the spiritual world really has in it for us and how it unites us with our source, our beloved, then the desire for the spirit, the higher planets, should just be nil. So I'll just end there and see if there's any questions.
You made many nice points. There was one thing I wanted to say again, because I really liked how you explained how we expect relationships in this world to be really perfect, and actually it's kind of natural because we have that, originally we had that perfect relationship with Krishna, and so it's kind of like we're trying to find that just in the wrong place. We're trying to find that in material relationships. But yeah, because we're all conditioned.
Thank you so much.
Really, and I really liked how you articulated that. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And please, any corrections as well.
No, thank you actually very much for your wonderful class. It was really interesting and very, very educational. You took, knowledge from so many different sources. So you've done really good preparation. And so I wanted to share what I liked about your class. I really liked how you described the spiritual world. It's how you just said that there is always something new going on. There is never boring. There is never boredom. Whereas here in this material world, every day, like for example, those who go to work every day, you have to get up and just boring. I mean, yeah. And then you said also that we cannot compare it to anything in this material world. It's just something completely different. We cannot even imagine. And you gave this example that, yes, it is said that it's a reflection, that this material world is the reflection of the spiritual world. Yet the reflection cannot really, it gives us some blurred idea, but it's very, very blurred. And it's true that when we look at the reflection in the river, the river itself makes it just look very blurry, and you can't really see how it's like. It's just some idea. And that, I guess I was just thinking that actually is what brings frustration, because it is there, but at the same time we cannot reach it. It's like Srila Prabhupada also gives this, or I'm not sure if it was Srila Prabhupada, but I heard someone saying that it's like, in the reflection you can see, for example, there are apples on the tree, and in the reflection you can see these apples, but you cannot eat those apples. So, and you're hungry, you're really hungry, and you're trying to eat this apple, but you can't. And this is what is our situation in this material world. We are really hungry for happiness, and we're trying to eat this fruit, but it's just a reflection, and then you just get frustrated. And that's why how you explained, that we can never be happy in this material world, no matter how much we're trying, and the real happiness will come if we act according to who we are. So there were many other points that were really interesting, but maybe someone else wants.
Thank you so much. Great. Thank you so much. Ashakapatura Vesya Charakapasanuvya Chapatitano Pavanebhya Vaishnavya Namo Namo.